Well, hey, I'm Rebecca Folks, happy homemaker, mom to 4 busy kids, and online entrepreneur. I've spent over a decade in this space working with high-achieving, high-performing women who carry the weight of juggling all the things. After many ups and downs of creating balance between home life, work life, and a million kid activities too, I learned how to slow down to actually accomplish more of the important things. I believe in all the to-doing, there are deep spaces in women's hearts that are sacred to us. Conviction in our identity, hospitality around our tables, and that quiet strength that only comes when we lay our head down at night, confident we're doing a good job where it matters most. Consider this a melting pot of wisdom learned over the years. From homemaking and wellness to influencing and marketing, we're diving into the topics that have created more peace, more joy, and in the end, more margin in my business and my life. Welcome to Wide Open Spaces. Well, hey, I'm so excited for y'all to hear from our guest today on the podcast. It's Chris Ochterbeck, lovingly known as Chris O. He owns Atlas Life Coaching, where he specializes in life coaching for marriages and for people that are going through different parts of their kind of faith journey. And maybe they've got questions for the first time, or maybe not the first time, maybe got it several times in, and they're wondering, they're needing someone to kind of guide them through those different storms, again, in their marriage or in their faith life. And today we kind of hone in on what can happen when you are sharing a bathroom and a bank account with someone, and just all the things that can come up, and how can you be a student of your spouse? How can you get on the same team, listen to understand? He offers tools. Eli and I have met with him over the last few months, and it has been so big for different ways that we're communicating differently, that we're listening, that we're understanding. I'm so grateful for his voice and so excited for y'all to hear from him today. Well, hey, welcome to the first Wide Open Spaces podcast. I am super excited. When we were talking about this, I knew, Chris, that I wanted you to come on first, because when I think about sacred areas and I think about foundational things, marriage and what you've kind of brought to the table has been so big for me and Eli. And so I wanted other people to hear from you. So thank you for coming on.
Hey, you're very welcome. So pumped to be here. So pumped to be one of the first, That's right. Let's go.
Okay. Okay. So tell me a little bit. You were a pastor for 20 years. And then you kind of started your ministry. And after doing basically every part of the church, you said, I think I'm going to do marriages. I think I'm going to start investing in it. What made you do that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I think the couple areas of focus that I have, marriages, and then I also work with kind of the spiritually wandering and wounded, like those are going to be my two silos of people that I work with. And honestly, it's because when you're a part of a church, a big church especially, there's just so many other factors going into it that rightfully so require time and attention and effort. And I just wanted to give all my time, attention, and effort to these key areas that I felt, number one, passionate about, but number two, and probably even should be number one, I guess, but that my wife and I had been through a lot of the struggles and trials of those things. And so it was like, you know what, I'm going to put all my attention and focus in these areas. And so that's kind of what led to that.
I love it. So when you say spiritually wounded and hurt, is that typically like from the church, or how did you say that? You said spiritually wounded.
Spiritually wounded and the wandering. And so
the wandering. Okay.
I think the wounded would certainly be, church hurt's a real thing. It happens. Yeah. And I love helping people in those spaces because you don't have to stay there. And especially if that wound starts affecting your relationship with God, it's just such it's a tragic thing that can get tied together, but it happens. And so, yeah, for sure. There's church hurt stuff, but the wandering side is just over the last couple of years, there's just been this massive explosion of people that are questioning things. And where do you ask those questions? Where do you go for answers? And it's not, I tell people, I'm not here to give you answers. I'm here to empower your questions and dig into those things. And let's try to find some truth together, and really at the end of the day, find peace in the process. That's a huge goal of mine with people. And so, yes, church hurt is definitely part of it, but some of it is just over the last few years, people are digging way deeper into certain things that used to be just accepted surface level, like, oh yeah, that's real. That's true.
Yeah.
And now people are asking bigger questions, and where do you go to get those answers? And I'm honored to, sometimes be invited in on that with people. So those two spaces, marriage and that thing I just described, require a lot of, I think, personal attention and take more time than sometimes you can just offer with, a few meetings here or there. You got to really dig in and with people. And I, for some reason, enjoy that. so yeah, I just decided, I'm going to take the leap, start this new thing. It was nerve wracking and scary and all that stuff, but we felt like it was the right thing to do. So here we are.
Yes. Well, I'm so grateful that you did. Tell me, okay, so if people were thinking, because really you say that you're in like coaching, and it's not counseling, it's coaching. So what would be the difference between coaching and counseling?
Well, first of all, I want to give a big nod to like the fact that counselors are, they're just so important going to counseling, or if you choose to go to coaching, anything like that, honoring that you need care, mental health care or emotional care or spiritual guidance, all that stuff is just so important. And so I think there's different avenues and ways to do that. But one of the key areas that is different between coaching and counseling is if I come across trauma with somebody, whether it's abuse or, it could be things like suicidal thoughts or things like that, I'm going to immediately refer out to somebody who's got years of training in how to handle that. And so there are certain areas where I wouldn't call myself an expert or give myself the green light to take care of people in those zones. And that's an immediate referral. So there's just certain deep things. Like I would basically say, once you get into trauma, that's a major area where a coach should refer. And it doesn't mean that the coach is not still involved in that person's life and process. It's a teamwork then between that counselor and the coach. So that's one big area. And then the other one, which is you get a different coach on here, a different counselor on here, they'll probably say a different answer. But for me, a big thing is coaching isn't spending a ton of time in the past, if any at all. We're identifying today, what does that past emotion or those past events, what does it mean for you today? And how are we going to incrementally shift our mindset or our behavior about that thing? And I have always tended to be the kind of person that thrives on that. I don't like to camp out too much in the past. And a friend of mine who actually is a licensed therapist, I was telling him what I want to do. And he was like, "You're a coach." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And he described to me what it is and what it means. And so I went off and got my certification and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, those are probably the two key differences: is be careful about trauma and refer, and we're not spending a ton of time in the past. We're taking from the past, and how does it inform our today and tomorrow? And coaches are supposed to focus on that.
Yeah. One thing that was really just inviting when we kind of had we went to lunch and with my husband and with Chris, and we were there, and you were kind of breaking some things down. And I love counseling. I love therapy. I love anything that's helping people get better and finding what obstacles are in their lives. But when you kind of pointed out with coaching that there's, whether you're an Olympic athlete or you're on the PGA Tour or you're going to climb Everest, whatever it is, you probably have a coach. And so that's kind of pointing out blind spots or just asking you questions about why you're going this way or that way.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you do that in marriage? And I think people can have such an issue, an aversion, or I don't know what the word would be, like, oh, if you're going to marriage counseling or coach, you must be in crisis. Something must be wrong. And I love the idea that something doesn't have to be broken to get better. And so that's right. Been just kind of something I've loved about working with you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I think it's right now, LeBron James is considering retirement randomly out of nowhere, but
He'll
He
be back.
is,
He'll be back.
he'll
They
be
all
back.
come
He'll be
back.
back. They'll be back. But he is rumored to spend $1 million on his body every year. And no one would look at LeBron James and be like, man, your body's broken. No, he's like
Wow.
and everybody looks at him as the pinnacle of physical health, that he's almost 40, still playing in the NBA, the longevity. But it's because of that investment into therapy, into, the different coaches, the training, all that stuff. And I think that should be the same with us spiritually and emotionally. If we want to be successful, let's have that team of people around us, whether it be counselors, coaches, pastors, mentors, all that stuff, and invest in it and allow it to be something that you're not broken because you need that. You're wanting to be more healthy. That's why you have that. So I love that. I'm glad that encouraged you.
It did. Maybe you want to show up.
Good.
So when people start to meet with you, I know when Eli and I, even like the first couple times, I even saw like a meme about this the other day, and it was talking about counseling. It was like your first session, you go in and you're like, really? I mean, I don't know. We just thought we'd kind of like try it. We don't even know if we have anything wrong. And then like the 10th, it was like before and after, and the 10th one, you're like, oh my gosh, you start digging and you're like, oh, there are different ways or things we've kind of put under the rug, or we could be doing so much, differently and just in different ways. And I just kind of wonder, like, do you, all the couples that you're working with, do you see different themes? Do you see like kind of like some main things that seem to come up? Like, is there any kind of theme like that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, I think a lot of times it's those 1% to 2% things at the beginning. Like if you take off in a plane in Little Rock and you're flying, my wife's German, and you were, flying overseas, if that plane's just a few degrees off course, you can't tell at the beginning, but over time, you're going to land in a whole different country. And I think a lot of couples wake up one day and they're like, how did we get here? And it's just because of these small things that need to be adjusted, were just never talked about, or they felt menial, but they weren't. Over time. They compounded. And some of those key things for sure would be, communication, I think, is just such a massive part of marriage. And it seems, I love it that a lot of people are like, well, this should be marriage. This should be my best friend. This should be easy. Why should communication be this hard? And a lot of times that hinders people from digging in and figure out why is it hard? And so I borrow from the love languages a lot. It's, they're simple, they're great, they're good to attach to, but my wife is German. And so I have this really cool example in my family of a woman who literally is speaking her second language to me, and German's her first language, English is her second language. And so we've literally had times where she didn't understand the word I was saying, like literally. Yeah. And I'm like, and it's helped us to understand that, to think deeper about how we're communicating. And I think in most marriages, we're not thinking about how is our spouse translating what I'm saying? How are they receiving it? And that would be a major theme, is just put a lot of intentionality into your communication, learn your spouse's style of communication, learn their love language. And my wife to this day has an accent, and it's beautiful and I love it. And I'm telling you, man, it is cute when you start to listen to your spouse's love language, even though it's not their first language. If you'll receive it and realize they're trying to speak your language, it becomes really endearing. And without focusing on that and learning that about each other, it just seems like, oh, why don't you understand my language, instead of taking your time. And so that would be a big one, is communication. Just if someone
hasn't read the Gary Chapman book about the 5 love languages, what are those love languages that you're referring to?
Yes, thank you. So words of affirmation, I'll start with mine because they're the most important. I'm kidding. But yeah, words of affirmation and quality time would probably be mine. Acts of service, gift giving, and help me, I'm drawing a blank.
Physical
touch. We got there together, but physical touch. And it's those 5 things. And most people have more than one. And then there's seasonal, like when we had kids, my wife's went from quality time and words of encouragement to acts of service.
Acts of service.
Okay. And words of affirmation, and it's, so again, it's being vigilant about that and being gracious about changes in life and just learning each other. I think communication is a big one. And real quick, if we have time on this question, I would say that healthy confrontation is probably the second one. And the biggest thing I try to get people to do is shifting from confrontation to collaboration. When we live in our marriage with a confrontational mindset, it can be very difficult. But when we get on the same side of the table, if you will, and go, let's collaborate on how to be stronger, how to be better. I think that's been the second thing that's been most prevalent in the couples, is just not really understanding how to be more collaborative. And there's just a lot of confronting. And so, for instance, with that one, I might be being long-winded, just edit it if I am. But with the confrontation, it's focused so much on the other person, what they're doing, what their actions are. But collaboration usually leads with, hey, I'm feeling this way and I want to stop feeling this way and I want to grow through this. Can we talk about this feeling? And when you did this, it made me feel this, and let's talk through that. And it's really cool how, when that's the focus, it can be very helpful and lead to more collaboration and less fighting. So those
maybe
are probably
some
the
self-awareness over how you're coming across or what you're doing. And that probably leads into communication. Like, that's not what I meant when I'm saying, or I'm doing this, and just some awareness around what you're communicating when you do those things.
What you're saying too, I think, is really cool, because the faster we can just become students of our spouse, the better. If we can set down defensiveness, set down the temptation to deflect, and just become a student of our spouse and go, man, I want to learn and I want to adjust. That's where it's at. And that comes from communication and healthy collaboration. So.
Yeah, because so often it feels like when we first, are drawn to someone, a lot of times it is like an opposite that you're attracted to, someone that's so different than you, and in the beginning we appreciate that so much. And I mean, Eli is definitely the most detailed. He notices if I get a new throw pillow. I mean, like if he will notice every single little thing. And I am I'm not super organized. The house might be a little this or a little that. And he absolutely notices. And in the beginning, those things are like cute and they're all new and you just appreciate every little thing. And then, 5-7 years goes in and you start going, why can't you be more like me? And so I love the idea of being a student of your spouse and just appreciating those differences and how you can collaborate, and that we don't have to be the same, and how that really just makes us more dynamic and just better together when we have differences. So that's so good. Are there are there a few things, like when you're having those, I'm trying to even think back to that kind of initial meeting, are there some kind of tips that you give people? Or they're kind of like is there a success path of sorts that you're kind of giving people, that you're walking them through on, here's some things, if you can really nail these few things, your life's going to be happier and more peaceful?
Well, I think, first of all, one of the reasons that I stepped into this world is to be as connected to the individual story as possible. So before I get into that, yes, I think there are, but I think every couple is so different. Every person is so different. So it's almost like
hard to generalize.
Yeah, it's hard to generalize, and it's hard to just, here's the 5 steps to greatness in your marriage. I mean, obviously there are themes, but I especially say that if you're out there and you're struggling and and you hear this podcast, you stumble upon this, or they follow you and they listen to it, and it's like, do these 5 things, and you're like, well, you know what? I have done these 5 things. You know what I mean? and it still sucks. And so I think there's a truth, there's a reality to that. And in that case, so my number 1 would be invite somebody into your struggle. I think if somebody is invited in that you trust and that has some level of proven method or whatever, they can help you chart a path through your struggle. And so I always lead with that one, because that means that they can look at your individual struggle, your individual personality, your spouse's personality, and help you come up with a game plan for you. And I think that'd be the first thing, is invite people into it. Don't go through it alone. Don't think that you're a failure, or, especially people who maybe they're involved in a spiritual or religious community. They feel like, I have to keep up, I can't be honest or authentic about what I'm going through. Find the right counselor or coach to do that with. And that would be the number one thing I would recommend for any marriage, is invite somebody in on it. The second thing I would say is, keep an eye on this, and I'll try to do this on here, but in your area of giftedness, show grace. In your area of weakness, show effort. And I see that marriages that have people that are gifted in an area showing grace, and that are weak in an area showing effort, as they do that, it brings them closer together. And so if you think about it like this, let's say if you believe in marriage this way, which I do, when you're married, you're tied together to that person. And the further you are apart from somebody, if that tied together, if there's a rope here between this and this, there's going to be tension the further you get apart. And so what eases the tension, baby? What eases the tension is when I'm here and I'm gifted, which I have those areas in my marriage, I show grace there to Kat. And when Katerina, my wife, is, she shows effort, that eases the tension, and vice versa. And so really, what I would say, two things would be: invite people in on your storm and be willing to show grace and effort. And if you do that, that's a recipe for I think you can make it through.
I love that. One thing that I remember that's kind of come up a couple times when we've been meeting, and you said, yeah, I hear women have a problem, or they have an aversion to this a lot. And that's when we've been talking about maybe a communication error or miscommunication or something coming up, and you say, well, if there was kind of like a framework or a script on what you would want him to say in this situation, what would you say? And immediately, I'm like, well, I don't want to tell you, because then you'll tell him and he'll just do it, and it'll just be a script, like a formula, and that just then it's all fake right there. And do you want to kind of tell what you're? Because I mean, that's a real feeling, but I really have appreciated your response to that.
Yeah, I love that, and it does happen a lot and it's funny because it happens with guys too. And what I've noticed with the men, a lot of times it's about affection. If I have to share the type of affection that I need, I need you to hug me, or I need you to, it's interesting but the men and women struggle with this. And I think the answer
that it's going to question the authenticity of it or
correct.
Something. Yeah.
Right. Is that even real? I had to ask for it, so it's not real. And what I can't remember verbatim, of course, what we talked about, but what I try to tell people is reframe that from, oh, well, that's not real, to your spouse loves you enough to listen to your need and respond to it. Isn't that better than them just ooey gooey feeling it all the time and doing it? No, they love you enough to choose to engage with you and your need. Wow. I mean, again, I love that. And it's helped change my ideas about this when Katerina asks for something that's not natural to me.
Right.
It's just, I used to, okay, so you and I would, we would be in trouble, man. Cause I'm the same way. I'm not detailed. I need my spouse, to help me with some of that stuff. And, but my wife loves a made bed in the morning, and we have so many pillows, and all this. And I didn't realize for the longest time that there's a top and a bottom to a pillow. You just throw the pillow on there, but no, there's a zipper and there's all these things. And well, I used to make the bed almost with a chip on my shoulder. I did it, but it was almost like, this is dumb. True love is when you when you speak a poem over someone or something. I don't know. True love is when you go on these epic dates, and this is just a chore. And when I learn how to go, no, this is truly communicating love to Katerina, when I focus on making this bed, or it doesn't have to be just making the bed, but these acts of service. So I actually a lot of times when I think of it, I literally speak, in my heart when I'm doing those things. I'm like, I love her. I'm just saying all those things to connect with the reality that this is communicating love. I feel like that is a more powerful expression of the choice of love than, because I'll text her during the day sometimes. I'm a little, like, I just love you, babe, whatever. But I'll do these little things and it's like, well, that's cool, but that's natural to me. When I'm willing to choose to love somebody in a way that's not natural to me, that is indicating how much I deeply am committed to the love, not just feeling that love, if that makes sense.
It does. And I mean, honestly, it kind of feels safer. I mean, that someone is actually caring enough to say, okay, this is important to you. And I'm going to get like, this doesn't even really make sense to me, or I feel awkward saying or doing it, but I'm willing to be the student and to learn what's important to you. And then to really kind of recognize how that response or that kind of initiation, what that does. And while in the beginning, it might feel like kind of an awkward dance of figuring that out, then it becomes more natural. And then they kind of start to learn why that matters and how to do it in their own way. But you have to be willing as the partner on that to have, I think you even said, be willing to, to think, oh, that's cute. They're trying at first. Like once you've said, hey, this is important to me, instead of being like, oh my gosh, he's just doing that because I told him that I wanted him to do it or whatever. But instead to kind of have the mindset of, okay, he's trying. He's trying, even if it might not be perfect. And the same on their side. But I think that was very helpful to me.
Yeah, I love that. And it's a helpful reminder to me too. Thank you for bringing it up. Like, to me, it's like, and again, I go back to, I have the benefit of a wife that literally speaks with a German accent. And it's like, Eli is going to speak to you in an accent and sometimes with his love language. And at first it can be like, what? I don't understand. But over time, as he learns, it's going to be like, man, this is awesome. You're cute. You're incredible. I love the way you've learned my language, and it's always going to be with his accent. I think it's really cool.
I love that. What would you say if someone's listening and they're thinking, well, yeah, I do want that. And that would be great. But my spouse would never show up for something like that. They would never go, put themselves in a vulnerable situation, or we've tried counseling before and that didn't work. Do you have any kind of anything you would say to that?
Yeah, I'm going to think about this one and be careful with my response. Like, I always like to honor somebody's process, and so if they're uncomfortable with it for some reason or unwilling, like, I think questions are your friend in that scenario. Hey, this is important to me. I think we need this. Why is this a struggle for you? So start by really, again, go back to that humble student role, ask questions, learn why your spouse feels that way. If you're on the one that wants it, and if I can speak to the one who's resisting it, let me go ahead and point the finger right at me and say, that was me. I resisted it. I was a pastor. My wife was like, hey, I think we need to go get counseling. And I was like, well, let's just go talk to the prayer warrior, on Tuesday or whatever, and she's like, no, I want to go to counseling. And I kind of resisted it, and it allowed landmines to exist in our marriage that could have destroyed our marriage and almost did. And so what I would tell the person resisting that is, be very careful in resisting that, because your spouse may need a third party to help her or himself express something to you that they can't. And that's where my wife was. And I'm so thankful that we made it through the storm that eventually happened because of my unwillingness to honor that request. And then, of course, once the storm hit, I honored it. And so I guess in short, what I'm saying to the resistor out there is, don't wait until the storm to get help. Honor your spouses if you can, need to do that and give it a try. And if it's failed in the past, try it again, especially if your spouse is asking for it. I think it's important.
That's so good. And I love, you've used this word a few times today, and I've heard you use it, just meeting with you over the last couple months, and which is honor. And I love that you use that word so often, and just, it feels like we live in a world that's just diminishes kind of people, especially, or, oh, they're just that way, or just kind of puts people down, and to really change how you think about your spouse, and that you want to be honoring to them. And I mean, I think I heard the other day, and I'm talking about marriages, people that have lived or been married for over 50 years. And the main word that they would use to describe like why they got there was respect. And that just feels like just being like honoring and respecting the other one and considering how would they respond to this. And so I think that I'm just really appreciative for everything that you're doing. And I mean, Eli and I've loved it. I mean, sometimes you go in there and you feel like, oh my gosh, somehow I feel like he just kicked my booty, but I didn't even know I was in a fight, but it's so good. And I mean, even the other day, Eli was doing something, and finally I was like, did Chris O tell you to do that? And he said no. But I was like, that's progress. That means that we're like growing in that area. He was like, no, he didn't. But it was like, oh, well, it sounded like a Chris O recommendation.
I had a client.
I appreciate you.
Oh man, my honor, for real. Well, there it is again. I said the word again, but it is an honor for real to partner with couples and people, and, just our Atlas Life Coaching is the name of what I do. And our slogan is join people in the journey and help them find their path. And so it's just really, really cool to join with you guys and all these others. But I had a client one time that they were like, I was just at home and I was like, what would Chris O do? What would, and I was just like, bro, you need to listen to the Holy Spirit. You know what I mean? And he like figured it out. And like, it was just he was a Christian guy that I was meeting with. And I was like, just empower that voice, or, in that inner voice within you that's going to guide you. And that's what I love, is when that kicks in, because you're learning these things about your spouse, and then you just it starts becoming more natural. And that's an incredible thing.
Thank you. If people wanted to kind of find more about what you're doing and your organization, or work with you, anything like that, where would they go?
Well, thank you. Yes. I have a website. It's atlaslifecoaching.org. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. I think I've taken a little bit, I've taken a little bit of time away from some of those things, just because it's been so busy with clients, which is great. I want that to be.
Don't you even have people in like South Africa or New Zealand or something, somewhere far away?
I have some international clients, which is great. I've got people in different states. And whoever knows how all these connections happen, but when they do, my deal is I believe every human being deserves care and guidance. And that brings me to another point, is I'm a complete nonprofit. And so there's no charge for that care. And that came partially through life experience as well, with financial issues and how do we get all this worked out. And I was like, man, I just want people to know they're valuable and they're worthy of care and guidance. And so I'm going to do this thing that way. And so, that's kind of, the website is great. You can message me on social media. It's Atlas Life Coaching on Instagram. And
we'll put all your information in the show notes so people can find you from the bottom. That way they can
links in the bio.
That's right. So official.
but yeah, so that would be the best way. And it truly is awesome to be invited on this. And so I'm, really, really proud to be a part of this. So thank you so much. And thank you for letting me share a little bit about what I've learned. And if there's anybody out there that there's a need in these areas, whether it be the spiritual wounded or wandering, or the marriages, I'm always here for that, and honored to help if I can.
Well, thanks, Chris. The honor was ours.
Thank you.
You just finished another episode of Wide Open Spaces. My hope is always that you felt encouraged as you listened. And if you found this valuable, will you share it with a friend today? Tag me if you do. I always love seeing your favorite takeaways. I'm so glad you were here, and I'll see you back next week. Same time, same place. See you then.